Wait, I need you to take a pause for a moment and think of the last time you said to someone, "I'll Skype you later tonight." It's okay if you don't remember, I don't either. Back in the 90s and early 2000s, getting anything done with someone meant they had to be right there with you. Even catching up with loved ones sometimes meant embarking on a marathon of long-distance journeys. This was the reality for most of us for a long time, a time when a visit to your loved ones wasn't a click away, but a journey of hours and perhaps days. But all of this came to a sudden halt with the invention of Skype. Skype set out to be the very first app for video calls, audio calls, and instant messaging. By the mid-2000s, Skype was the talk of the town and millions were totally hooked. It was a whole cultural shift and it became a part of our everyday conversations with phrases like "Skype me about it" or "I'll Skype you later tonight." I mean, Skype was practically the future, or at least that's what everyone believed. Nowadays, if you needed to hop on a video call with someone, your first choice would most definitely not be Skype. It would probably be WhatsApp, FaceTime, or even Zoom. So how exactly did Skype go from revolutionizing the world of instant messaging to becoming something we barely even think of using today? Back in the early 2000s, things were a bit tricky on the communication front. You had two not so great options. Either you break the bank paying AT&T or you settle for the weird interface of MSN Messenger. It was a real issue, and the founders of Skype, Niklas Zennström and Janus Friis, sensed the frustration in the air. Partnering up with some Estonian developers, they whipped up a minimal viable product by 2003, and just like that, Skype was born, standing for Sky Peer-to-Peer. It hit the scene like a storm, tapping into a really pressing demand. People were ready for a better solution, and Skype delivered precisely that. Skype became a sensation in no time, thanks to its game-changing features and a top-notch user experience that outshone its early rivals. It makes you wonder, what exactly did they do differently? Well, while others loaded up their platforms with features, Zennström and Friis focused on just one thing for Skype: communication. Their revolutionary leap in Voice over Internet Protocol, or VoIP technology, completely transformed the online communication landscape, unlocking exciting new opportunities for global collaboration. Imagine being able to communicate with anyone without being linked to a central server. Skype made it happen, allowing people worldwide to indulge in crystal clear voice and video calls. In the early 2000s, this breakthrough was the secret sauce that propelled Skype into the limelight and changed the communication game for good. Whether it was catching up with friends or conducting virtual conferences with colleagues, the platform won everyone over. Businesses in particular saw it as the perfect fix for budget-friendly communication with both their team and customers. Building on this early success, the founders decided to go into traditional phone calls with the introduction of Skype Out. Now, this might not sound groundbreaking today, but back in 2005, it was mind-blowing. Not everyone had a computer, and yet you could make calls to landlines or mobiles directly from your computer, all for a mere 2 cents per minute. Now, let me put that into perspective. If you didn't have an international phone plan with AT&T in 2005, you'll be looking at a hefty $2.71 per minute charge. That's a whole lot of money. Skype, on the other hand, was a game changer in terms of both cost and convenience. Within 18 months of its launch, Skype gained 23 million registered users, and in just 2 years, they hit the impressive milestone of 100 million downloads. By 2005, they were already having an incredible run, and it was no surprise when Skype started to catch the eye of bigger corporations like eBay. And eBay wasn't offering pocket change here. We're talking about a massive $2.6 billion offer. Yes, you heard that right. In just about 3 years, Skype went from zero to a staggering $2.6 billion. Fast forward to the end of 2005, and Skype pulled out its ace card, video calling. Then, mid-2006 witnessed another milestone, the launch of massive calls, accommodating up to 100 people. By the close of 2007, Skype had written its name in the Digital Hall of Fame with 220 million registered users. Not too bad for a startup, right? But this somewhat phenomenal growth marked the very beginning of Skype's downfall. eBay's decision to acquire Skype made sense on paper. It aimed to smooth out communication wrinkles between buyers and sellers in e-commerce, but in practice, it didn't quite go as expected. This was because users weren't warming up to the idea of using Skype for transactions, rendering it somewhat meaningless in eBay's grand scheme. Now, when eBay acquired Skype, it already had promising revenue growth. However, fitting Skype into eBay's e-commerce structure proved trickier than anticipated. Despite the big box on the table, it quickly became apparent that eBay struggled to figure out how to cash in on Skype and failed to seamlessly integrate it into their wide range of services. eBay's commitment to Skype growth was lukewarm at best. Their major focus remained e-commerce, leaving Skype without the necessary resources for sustained growth and innovation. This lack of support hindered Skype's ability to keep up with the evolving landscape of communication tools. As if this wasn't enough, eBay dropped the news that they had overvalued Skype, sparking tensions between the founders and eBay's top executives. The fallout reached its peak in early 2008 when Fries and Zenstrom had to take a bow from the company and eBay pulled the plug on Skype. Luck shone on Skype again when George Silverman was appointed as eBay's new CEO in February of 2008. He set out to breathe new life into Skype, focusing on improving video calls, revamping subscription programs, and introducing premium accounts. Plus, he made a smart move by launching an iOS app which quickly gained traction with over 1 million downloads within 2 days. George's strategic tweaks started paying dividend, and by 2009, Skype was adding around 380,000 users daily and pulling in about $740 million in revenue. That same year, eBay made what I would like to call a really calculated move by selling off 70% of Skype to an investment group led by Silvershake for an hefty price of $1.9 billion. With the new owners in control, the platform saw a remarkable surge, hitting the 1 billion download mark by 2010, just about a year post-acquisition. Suddenly, Skype found itself holding a near monopoly on video calls with a 25% share of the global market. However, the story took another turn for the worse in 2011 when Microsoft came knocking with a $8.5 billion offer. Now, before we move on to this next chapter in Skype's fall from grace, hit that subscribe button and turn on your post notifications to get a front row seat to all newly posted videos. Okay, let's get back on track. Now, as Skype was dominating the scene, speculations were going around that tech giants like Google and Microsoft were eyeing it for acquisition. However, what many didn't realize at the time was that despite its soaring popularity, Skype was struggling financially. With losses amounting to $7 million and a hefty debt of $700 million, the pressure was on the new owners to quickly turn the tide in their favor. First thought, especially considering they already had VoIP technology integrated into their programs like Windows Live Messenger. However, if you take a closer look at their product lineup at the time, Windows Phone, Xbox, Bing, Office 365 and more, it starts to make sense. Skype could have been the missing piece in their puzzle, especially with its user base of 9 million paid subscribers. In May 2011, Microsoft made headlines with the announcement of its jaw-dropping $8.5 billion acquisition of Skype. But what really got people talking was the price tag. It was about 3 times Skype's valuation at the time. Time magazine summed up this sentiment perfectly with this quote: "A few years down the line, Microsoft's $8.5 billion purchase of Skype will either seem outrageous or it will look like a good idea." And true to their words, it turned out to be one of these two, a really outrageous idea. After the acquisition, things seemed stagnant for a while. It appeared as though Microsoft wasn't quite sure how to fully use their new toy. However, like a child rediscovering a neglected toy, Microsoft eventually dove headfirst into experimenting with Skype. They began rolling out new features like emojis and borrowed elements from Snapchat, aiming to compete in the crowded online messaging and social media arena. They also started to incorporate Skype into their own Microsoft Teams platform. Now here's the thing, even though a whole 55 million people were using Skype every day, Microsoft couldn't quite figure out how to turn all of those users into profit. It's like they had this massive user base, but it wasn't really showing up on their balance sheet. As time went on, Skype found itself caught in a bit of a tight spot. It was trying to cater to both regular users and business users, but it just couldn't seem to strike the right balance. Even Microsoft had to admit that Skype had its fair share of problems. So they came out with Teams, which was kind of like their attempt at dethroning Slack back in November 2016. It was around this time they started adding video calls to Teams too, and that's when you could say they kind of started sidelining Skype. In their rush to innovate, they completely lost sight of what made Skype great in the first place: those high-quality video calls. By June 2017, the app's rating in the store had plunged from a decent 3.5 stars to a terrible 1.5 stars, a clear sign that something had gone seriously wrong. At Microsoft's Ignite conference in September of 2017, they signaled the end of Skype's business-oriented sideline, announcing that Teams would soon take its place. You see, Skype for Business, which was launched back in 2011, was like the Swiss Army knife of business communication. It had everything a company needed: messaging, video calls, file sharing, and it worked seamlessly with other Microsoft products, which made it popular with businesses already using Microsoft services. Then, about a year and a half later, Microsoft confirmed the switch. Teams would replace the consumer version of Skype as well. But before this transition, Skype went through a major redesign aimed at modernizing the platform and attracting younger users. Unfortunately, it backfired spectacularly. Users were met with a confusing interface and cluttered features and sluggish performance. The Snapchat-inspired highlights feature in particular drew strong criticism. In response, Skype released a blog post expressing their apology. Malik, a partner at investment company True Ventures, shed some light on the situation, saying, "Sometimes when big companies develop products, they tend to add too many features. They ended up messing it up along the way." Malik, who used to be a huge supporter of Skype, expressed his frustration with the redesign, saying, "It was so bad that it was the last straw for me. I just couldn't bear using Skype anymore. The whole thing became confusing, the interface deteriorated, and the performance became unbearable. It lost the simplicity it once had." However, it wasn't until the coronavirus pandemic in 2020 that the realization started to really hit. A situation that should have prompted people to download Skype to stay connected led to a surge for a new app instead: Zoom. Back in 2011, Eric Yuan, who had been working at Cisco, had this brilliant idea to do something a bit different in the video communication scene. He wanted to make it way easier and smoother for people to chat face to face. Now, while Microsoft was scrambling around with no clue what to do with Skype, Zoom was busy fine-tuning its game. Instead of going overboard with new features, Zoom kept it simple and focused on what really mattered, making communication super smooth and secure. Zoom suddenly became the golden child of video calls, both for everyday chats and business meetings. People started seeing Skype as something outdated in the video calling world, and as expected, the media was totally on board with that narrative. Between May 2019 and February of 2020, Skype was the talk of the town in media discussions about video conferencing, according to data from Mockrack, a website that tracks journalism worldwide. But when journalists started giving recommendations on which software to use, the only word on their tongues was Zoom. In March, for example, Skype got mentioned in around 51,000 articles, while Zoom's mention shot up to 60,000 stories, and the trend continued. Come April, Skype stayed steadily at 50,000 articles, while Zoom skyrocketed to an incredible number of 195,000 stories. Now, the coronavirus outbreak didn't directly cause the decline of Skype, but it sure sped things up. It was like a catalyst, accelerating what had already been a 3-year-long shift away from Skype. With the sudden need for a reliable video conferencing system, people weren't about to sit around doing nothing, especially knowing that Skype was already on its way out thanks to Microsoft's announcement of its impending shutdown. So instead of waiting around, they made a beeline for Zoom. Zoom's success lies in its easy-to-use interface and top-notch video and audio quality, the very thing Skype was failing at. By capitalizing on Skype's weakness, Zoom positioned itself as the go-to choice for anyone looking to communicate online with no itches. With Zoom offering this smooth user experience, it was no surprise when people started ditching Skype faster than you could say video call. This huge development was great for a lot of people, but certainly not Microsoft. This led to the tough decision of closing the curtains on Skype for Business in 2021 to allow them focus on the more personal version, a decision that they should have made a really long time ago. However, on a brighter note for Skype, there have been some recent enhancements worth noting. For instance, they have introduced the Meet Now feature, similar to Zoom's Meeting ID, allowing easy access to calls via a link. Plus, Skype has followed suit with its competitor Zoom by launching a browser version and integrating features like screen sharing and background blurring into Meet Now video calls. Users can also now record conversations with Skype, storing these recordings for up to 30 days. While Skype might not be the big shot it once was, it's still hanging in there in the competitive market. Some people believe these new changes will be able to help it regain its top spot in the video conferencing game, but I'll let you be the judge of that. Do you think these changes are enough to save the future of Skype? Join the conversation in the comments below and see you in another video.